We are back with another round of Sister Scoop, and we have some really solid news coming out this week. A lot of it really about the future of where Marvel is going after really all of this at this point. So, getting right into it, let's talk about going inside Marvel after Endgame. There's been a lot of conversations. I think Thunderbolts started a lot of these conversations once again about where we've been since 2021.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of Thunderbolts and a pretty in-depth Wall Street Journal article. I'm not going to lie, I don't subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, so I couldn't read the original, but I have read the derivative articles written about the article. So it really talks a lot about kind of the last 5 years in Marvel. And I think we've all kind of been having these continual conversations about how the MCU has changed since Endgame and how maybe not all of those changes have been positive. So,
Yeah.
the article really details kind of the inner workings of the studio in what they're calling the early 2020s, which is wild to me that we're like labeling it that way. It's kind of horrifying, but basically they kind of posit, the studio was really pushed to develop a lot of content for Disney Plus to fill that service, which I think nobody's surprised about. That's not really news. But what was interesting is they talked about how Kevin himself was really just stretched way too thin, had too much on his plate, and wasn't able to give feedback until, the 11th hour on projects, which was causing a lot of, rushed jobs. I think probably some edits that maybe weren't as smoothly done. I'm not talking like physical edits, but like actual plot edits that weren't as smoothly integrated into the overall plot as maybe we would like. There was one anecdote that I thought was really funny that they were saying that staffers at Marvel actually had to run after him in the hall just to get like 5 minutes with him, which is crazy, but he's, the mastermind of it all. And we know how much content they were pumping out. So they were doing a lot. Now, as we know, the mandate has completely flipped from Disney. They want to do less content, really focus on quality over quantity. And that's kind of limiting or coming to terms as being 2 live action shows per year, not as connected to the MCU as they have been. And that second piece is important. I know. I don't know how I feel about that. The second piece, though, is important.
That's just a waste. In
my
opinion. Why do it then?
Then exactly, like, then why am I investing my time? That could be a whole other like episode, and honestly, maybe it will be. We're bookmarking that for another discussion.
Yeah.
But I think what they're trying to get at is it's gotten to the place where it is not accessible for new fans to join the fandom without having seen I don't even know how many we're at now, like 30 to 40 previous projects, which there is some merit to that. My own best friend has told me she fell behind because she stopped going to the movies with me. And she's just like, I don't even know where to begin. And I'm so daunted by the fact that like there's so much I've missed and everything ties in. And now I can't even, catch up. So I do think that there is some merit to that. Do I think that completely divorcing the shows from the MCU or really cutting back the ties is the answer? No. Do I think that putting out less content in general could be the answer? Yes. I don't know. I see it, but I'm also like, I think this is a overcorrection. A lot to chew on. That's all I'm going to say. A lot to chew on.
Well, let me give you a moment to like breathe. And
yeah,
I'm going to give my 2 cents on this. Obviously I kind of reacted to the whole show thing. I think I love the Disney Plus shows. I think it's been great to be able to have more than just 2 or 3 movies a year. I mean, that's what we were used to, and that was great for the cadence it was. But we do have a streaming service that gives us the ability to have TV shows and have a different medium. So that is disappointing to me in that front. As far as making the MCU more and or less accessible depending on your point of view, I think I feel both ways, and I think maybe that's kind of what you were at too. I do think in some capacity, I don't feel that phases 4 and 5 so far really are as heavily tied to, at this point, phases 1 through 3 anymore. Like, there are things fair. I think about, like even Thunderbolts, and yes, okay, say theoretically I didn't know any of these characters, I would have just as much enjoyed it. Like, I still would have met Yelena and John and well, obviously we know Bucky from longer, but Bucky was in the Falcon and Winter Soldier, like Red Guardian. All these characters, with the exception of actually Ghost, have all made an appearance in Phase 4 at this point, or Phase 5.
Yeah.
So I think the further into it we've gotten, the more it's actually allowed itself to separate and not ride quite as heavily on phases 1 through 3. And in that respect, I think that greatly diminishes how many movies at that point, because there weren't any shows that you might watch. So I kind of see both sides. I think, though, I really think divorcing the shows from the MCU, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's a
Yeah.
connected universe. And I think a lot of fan complaints have actually been how Phase 4 wasn't connected.
Well,
So I think that's, to your point, an overcorrection.
and this is the last thing I'll say because I know you got two other pieces of news, but I think then, and I don't know that it's a total divorce, but they are pulling back at least some of the overt connections. But I think if you do that, you're essentially going back to the Netflix model or the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. model, where you have these things running in parallel to the MCU. And yes, they're going to be able to reference it. Like, they couldn't even reference Loki's invasion in the Netflix shows. They called it,
Yeah.
what, the event or something, like super vague. So there's going to be a little bit more connection than that. But that's essentially the vibe that they seem to be wanting to go back to. I would much rather it go in the vein of Daredevil Born Again, where it's like, all right, like, this exists within the MCU. It could be a little more tied in, but it still has strong connections. And maybe that's what they mean by this. But I don't know. That makes me very, very nervous. And like, I'm very unhappy about that
Well,
particular piece of the news.
and that's fair. And I think here's my 2 cents. They tried this before. We heard this before from Disney. Oh, we're going to pull back. Oh, we're going to. And then did they? No. Like,
We have like three shows and
know,
3 movies this year.
well, right. And I know, like, you and I even said that looking at the slate, we were like, okay, but this is not really pulling back. Now, granted, I think it was like 2022. I think we both really wanted that year to just end because that
Yeah.
one just never stopped.
That was
But like,
crazy.
still, I do think you have, like, they said this before. Let's just say
Yeah.
that. And I don't really feel like it changed. So we'll see. But to your point, we do have other news to cover. This one, kind of another update to the future of the MCU, though. Kevin Feige wants to do 10 years of the X-Men, and I'm not complaining. Like, that is what I want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think the X-Men themselves are so many stories, some of which have been done, some of which haven't been done, some of which have been done in animation and in other mediums. I just think, I mean, if the reaction to X-Men 97 is any indicator of the fans' appetite for the X-Men and their stories to be told, or the response to Channing Tatum's Gambit, anytime anything related to X-Men has come on the screen, people have absolutely gone wild. I do think that they can absolutely make this last 10 years. I think the other interesting thing about this piece of news is it was revealed this week that Ryan Reynolds is shopping a Deadpool and X-Men movie at the studio. So that could be possibly in, potentially in development in the next few years. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like maybe we do the X-Men before we like tie them into Deadpool, because yeah, I just think like tonally I would rather see them the X-Men. But, that's fine. I love good interconnected moment, and heck, maybe it'll work really nicely. I loved Deadpool and Wolverine, so we'll see. But overall, this one makes me really happy.
Yeah, I just to piggyback, there are so many stories, to your point, to say and tell with the X-Men. I think they've covered a lot of the really, really big ones in X-Men and then X-Men 97. But I just want to see the X-Men done genuinely right. I'm not crapping on the OGs, but I do think having the opportunity to really build upon it and tell the stories all the way through, not kind of pick and whatever, that's what I want to see. Like, I'm sorry, but the OG starting with Rogue being with Wolverine, like, that whole thing just already annoys me. Like, that's
And
not
the
it, you
X-Men
know?
are so integrated into the overall universe within the comics, right?
Right.
I mean, even beyond storylines like the X-Men versus the Avengers and things like that, which please, 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 please. That's the one I will hang my hat on, please. But, even beyond that, there's so many moments where they're coming in and out of different teams and they're interacting. And that was obviously not happening when they were owned by Fox. So, just beyond the actual unit itself, I think, and their wonderful and incredible and moving storylines, there's also the ones where you get to bring in Wanda and all of those characters that were
Yeah.
not really available to them before. 10 years, they could probably go 20. I'm not trying to ask them to do that, but I just think the material is so ripe and there's so much of it.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to our last one, we'll make this one quick, mainly because other than the actual concept of it, I don't know what else to add. There's rumor going around that RDJ might be playing up to 4 different roles in Doomsday. Period. The end. What the heck?
That's a lot. So we
Yeah.
know 2 of the roles. Well, supposedly we know 2 of the roles are Iron Man and Daredevil. Doctor Doom. I have in my notes written DD, which I usually write for Daredevil, but I instead in this case it's Doctor Doom, which totally threw me for a loop. But those are 2 then unknown roles. Could be variants of either one of those, completely new characters. Who the heck knows? But I think I've also seen that Chris Evans, who says he's not in the film, should be playing multiple versions as well, or multiple characters as well. So it seems
Yeah.
like they might be bringing back some of the OGs to play different variants of themselves. I would love a Hydra Cap, like that moment. If we could
That
bring
seems
that
to be a
life,
big one.
that
Seems
would
to
be
be a big
huge.
rumor.
Yeah, I would die. I would fall
Yeah.
out of my chair.
So it seems interesting what's going to happen here. We might be getting a lot of Chris's and a whole lot of RDJs, and that's very exciting. I think that this is the type of movie that we all talk about fan service and stuff of that crap, and I get it. But like, this is the type of movie where you expect some of this. Same as, I mean, remember when we all thought Multiverse of Madness was going to have like the craziest cameos? And it did have a few, but I think, remember when I was like, Multiverse of Madness? We went through 2 multiverses or 2 universes.
True, though. It's so
there
true.
was so much madness.
I know.
I think what everybody thought that movie was going to be is really what Secret Wars and Doomsday at the end of the day should be to a capacity. We are having several, if not more than several universes clashing into each other, creating a battle world. I do expect to see some of this stuff. And yes, it might be a little bit of fan service, but that's the type of movie. If this happened in Thunderbolts, I would have been like, what are you doing?
I actually think they executed that really well, and I know we talked about this in Deadpool and Wolverine. They found that balance, and because they were in the void, they were able to bring in characters from so many different universes, though they themselves were not physically in that many universes. So if we can get something that is measured in that way, where it's like, oh, we see every cameo that we see has a reason that they're there, and it's not just because they want to show, I don't know. We know James Marsden is in it already, but like they want to show James Marsden for 5 seconds. Right. Great, he's in it. Let's hope that he has a real reason to be there, because otherwise then it is just kind of like empty. And that's what I'm hoping is they do meaningful cameos and they make these roles mean something or serve some sort of purpose.
Yeah, I totally agree. But that has been this week's Sister Scoop. Make sure you guys join us next week as we cover 3 more Marvel news topics as they come out. We are also still in our Thunderbolts era. We will be for, well, this week, but when this comes out, whatever. We still will be for a little while. All right, just know that. So keep up with us on the podcast side because we are still covering Thunderbolts. If you haven't seen it, go see it, please, in theaters. It was great. But until next time, we'll see ya. Bye.